Following the Toronto Maple Leafs win against the Boston Bruins, Brad Marchand has spoken out on the Leafs, and he had some very interesting things to say. So I'm going to break that down in this episode of Leafs Digest, as well as Sheldon Keefe. He also spoke out and kind of revealed some of his happiness with the Austin Matthews line and just what the key has been to their success going forward. So I'm going to break all that down in this episode. But before we do, quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. We're producing 1 to 2 videos a day for you all. So if you could hit the subscribe button, it would mean the world to Darius and I. About 80% of you who are watching aren't subscribed. And Darius, let's be honest here. The Leafs were in a pretty good spot. We obviously made a video earlier covering some of the updates regarding Nylander. Andrew Peeke is obviously out for a few games at the time of recording. But there were some other things that happened. Obviously, a lot of news going down right now. Let's start with Brad Marchand speaking out on the Leafs. And to everyone's surprise, he kind of had some good things to say about the Toronto Maple Leafs and kind of some praise to give. And he said, on last night's Game 2 loss, we have to continue to be better. It's a very tight playoff series. We knew it was going to be a battle, and they showed up. And, yeah, they're playing for keeps. They've showed up, is what Brad Marchand said. And to be honest, he's very right. They did show up yesterday, and teams in the past, Toronto Maple Leafs teams, maybe wouldn't have showed up yesterday. They would have backed down. The physicality could have gotten to them. It could have all gotten to their head, but they showed up yesterday. Austin Matthews obviously being the savior, which we'll touch on in a second. But Darius, what are your thoughts on these comments from the Bruins player, Brad Marchand? A bit of an interesting one considering they're going back and forth, but at the end of the day, I think game respects game here, and they know they need to lock it in. Both teams do, but especially the Bruins now following that loss and the loss of a very good defenseman in Andrew Peeke.
I think it is game respects game a little bit to a degree, but I also think it might be mind games. I think it might be a little bit of he knows that these quotes are going to get out there and some of the players might hear about it, even though most of the players, probably try and stay off social and all that stuff during the playoffs. But I'm sure it's a little bit of mind games and he's throwing some things out there because that is the game he plays. I'm sure he's a very nice person, but that's the type of game Brad Marchand likes to play. So I'm thinking it's a little bit of mind games to see if you can mess with the Leafs and make them feel, a little too good about themselves and maybe get caught off guard by the Bruins. But at the same time, I do think it is, like you said, game respecting game. The Leafs have been playing very well. I think they've been the better team for a game and a half so far this series. And unfortunately, the Bruins just got couple lucky breaks on some breakdowns and bad plays, and they have a game here. But yeah, I think Brad Marchand is absolutely right. The Leafs are coming to play for keeps. It looks like they're playing pretty confident, and nice of Brad Marchand to say that. Nice of him to say that. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, thank you, Brad, and very, very nice. But looking here, discussing Brad Marchand again, someone said, I didn't realize it last night, but Marchand got slashed in the right leg, but grabbed his left leg. He grabbed the wrong leg. So some diving going on from Brad Marchand, some fake stuff. And Bruins head coach Jim Montgomery on Austin Matthews, he spoke out on the Leafs as well, saying he's the most dangerous man in the ice. He's the most dangerous man on the ice because he's earned it. Now, this is an interesting quote because, he's saying that Matthews is more dangerous. I'm assuming he's talking about out of the Leafs players, but you could take it out of context and maybe say he's more dangerous than David Pastrnak and all these guys. We really want to get spicy with it, but he's right. And Darius, we know Austin Matthews has been on fire. He's been taking over the kind of the Maple Leafs, the hockey world this season specifically. He scored his 70th goal. You can't see my hands right now. 70th goal yesterday. Obviously, it wasn't in the regular season. It doesn't count. But 70th goal as a total on the year. So shout out to him for that. But he's been on fire, and Jim Montgomery gave him some nice praise, which is, he doesn't care. I can almost assure you Austin Matthews doesn't care, but we can talk about it because, it makes sense. He was the reason they won the game yesterday. Huge shout out to Matthews.
I think it's exactly what you're saying, Jim Montgomery is saying. I think it's a little bit of a challenge to his players, to be honest. I know his players are probably going to hear what he says and all that stuff. So I think it's a little bit of a challenge to his players because let's be honest, Matthews has been probably the best player on the ice this series so far, especially after last night. He just has been. And praising his defensive game and everything like that, he took over the game, right? He really wanted it, and he made sure that the Leafs won. So I think that's exactly what Jim Montgomery is saying. I think it's a mix of obviously giving praise to Matthews, not being totally ignorant to the fact that Matthews played well and is a great player, but as well as a challenge to his own players because Matthews is winning a lot of the matchup battles when he's put out there on the ice, and the Leafs were away; they didn't even have last change. So I think it's great, and yeah, I think Matthews is going to continue to do it because we've seen it. But great praise there from the Bruins coach. Usually you don't see that. A lot of my games usually, and I thought that's how the series started. But I just don't know how to read into most of these things. I don't know if they're playing mind games with each other, if they're just being real for a second. But nice of Jim to say that.
Yeah, funny. A lot of positivity. And it's not something you usually get. Yeah, it's not something you usually get in the playoffs from anyone, including the fans of either team. But yeah, that'll wrap that part up. Let us know what your thoughts are on that. And are you surprised that the Bruins players and coaches are kind of giving the Leafs some praise there. But let's touch on Sheldon Keefe. He spoke out on the win yesterday and the key to success, which, surprise, surprise, was Austin Matthews again. And you look at his advanced metrics yesterday, Darius, he probably had the best game in his Leafs, or in his career, his best playoff game, which you can obviously argue probably is the best game if you consider impact, but his best playoff game in his career when you're looking at just how good he was yesterday, both offensively and defensively. And Sheldon Keefe had some things to say. I'm not going to read the entirety of it, but this is what Sheldon Keefe had to say about the positive shown by the Matthews line. Feel free to pause and read it. He also spoke on some of the other lines and on Mitch Marner's struggles as well, but he said how they competed and worked. Austin has a goal and 2 assists. He was all over the stat sheet tonight in so many regards. He's affecting the game positively. He basically goes on to say with the way he's worked and competed, he's been playing good on both ends, hard, physical, and he also gave some praise to Max Domi, to Pontus Holmberg, like you mentioned yesterday, Darius. We touched on it on the stream. We mentioned how Pontus Holmberg was great. He gave us great shifts. The David Kampf line was good. He had a goal in game 1. He loved the effort. And Mitch Marner, you can see the second last paragraph there, he said he was making plays offensively for us, great defensive plays. I don't really know about that, but he's not going to throw Mitch Marner under the bus because that's just not something you do in a playoff series, because that's getting more likely to get him off the rails than on the rails, especially someone like Mitch Marner who has shown in the past I'm not going to say he's like necessarily like sensitive or anything like that, but he definitely is doesn't take too kindly to the media and things like that. So good call by Sheldon Keefe on that. And then he did speak out on how to keep the momentum rolling Wednesday. Before we get into that, Darius, what are your thoughts on this original little block of quotes?
There's some things to read in between the lines, I think. With what he said about some of the lines, you can kind of read into that the second line wasn't great. The one with Mitch Marner, John Tavares, and Matthew Nyes on it, you can kind of read into what he's trying to say without saying it. That line has to get better, but I love the fact that he's going out of his way to praise everyone and really say what they did well. And again, Matthews, we talked about him. A goal and 2 assists. Yes, you can look at that. Those are the basic stats. But if you look at his advanced stats, again, like you said, probably his best game as a Maple Leaf in terms of impact, and definitely his best playoff performance. And his expected goals, not just his, but the entire line, that first line, was 80% for the game. I mean, that's pure domination the entire game. You're winning pretty much the entire time you're out there. You're winning those battles and you're winning the ice, right? So great performance from everyone, and I like the fact that Keefe is giving credit where credit is due, but also not holding back in some areas. I know he's, trying not to dig at certain guys, but he's also explaining, okay, this is where we made the mistakes, and I think that's a little refreshing, to be honest, for Leaf fans.
I agree, and it was good. He actually gave an in-depth response, which is, he wouldn't have done this if they won, or if they lost, sorry, but that's okay. We'll move on now quickly to wrap up how they can keep the momentum going for tomorrow's game. He said it's a matter of recognizing this is how it's going to be. It's going to be tough. These are 2 really good teams. He believes in the group. The team is great. It's a really good team. Ton of respect for them. To be honest, it seems like there's a lot of mutual respect between the 2 teams, which is hilarious because they're huge rivals, and in the game they get all physical. But outside of the game, the coaches have respect for the team, and you kind of have to you don't have to respect the Bruins. You can say that they're a very good team because they definitely are, and they pushed the Leafs in game 1 to their limits, and they came back and pushed the Bruins to their limits. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know what your thoughts are on all that. It's going to be an exciting next 24 hours, or a bit more than that, 26 hours, 27 hours. This time tomorrow, we'll be getting ready for game 1, or maybe later today, depending on when this video is up. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you soon.